Okay, now I hit. Yeah, I don't know why it's a three-part process half the time, but it seems to be. Aha! Okay, there we go. Successfully connected. We're all connected. We're all there. We are live. Everything's good. Okay, now sometimes what I do is I link that one or I share the live thing. I shared it yesterday. I struggle with overexposure, which usually comes out as I am very bad marketing and networking because I will say, "Ooh, I reminded people of this 6 months ago. Do I do it again? I don't want to be needy and clingy." And I
Well,
realized
that's
that
the fun part of it.
you have to be needy. You have to remind everyone every hour, every day, every.
Well, it's right now. It's your how to be heard above the noise. If you're not screaming, no one else is going to hear you.
Well, yeah, but that it bothers me. But just about every human I've ever met. Whoa! What is happening here? I'm logged into the wrong thing. That's why. Okay. Ugh, oh my
You,
goodness.
you, I won't patronize you, Ross, but you definitely have Rob's audio going out, right?
Yes, I checked
All right,
3 times. Audio is confirmed.
good.
We should all be fine. I want to.
So what you're saying is that's a problem you've had before.
Yes. Occasionally, I forget to turn on Ian's audio, so his his audio portion.
It's not so important. Well, none of this is important as far as I can, but it's significantly less important what I say than the head brewer of.
You do it, yeah. Okay, I've got you both. I've got you
I
both.
don't know if I'd go with head brewer. Just how about only brewer?
Will you
Well,
take
then
Yeah,
by
by
virtue of the fact
default, yeah.
will you take brewmaster?
Default.
the default brewer
Yeah.
at Great Roads Brewing.
That doesn't sound better.
No, he's the default brewer. You haven't got that on your CV, have you, Rob? Default
No,
brewer.
I actually discovered I have to write one. I don't even have a resume.
Oh, okay.
I came to this gig out of the military as part of my voc rehab program, and never left.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
I
what that is.
took in my when I left after my time in the military, I did a bunch of home improvement courses. Not home, but bricklaying, mudding,
Yeah,
uh,
trade skills. Yeah.
electrical. Yeah, skills that I could use around the home, but not at any point have I ever dreamed of going into any of those things professionally. But clearly, you are. And
Well,
is this the
yeah.
busman's holiday that you're pursuing right now?
No, this was not even something I thought of doing. COVID led me to this. But yeah, no, I actually could pick almost anything and go do it through because Veterans Affairs because my retirement was medically induced. I have a pretty good pot of money for education, and 8 more years to use it. So, um, when I find that basket weaving course that I really want to take because I want to make really nice baskets, um, you know, off I go.
My
The world
sister,
needs families.
my sister went to NASCAD, and she says that while she was at NASCAD, the ongoing joke was since it was a fine arts university, and there was a basket weaving course, but because of the story, the legend of if you want to take it easy, always take basket. Oh, come on, it might be an easy course, but it's no basket weaving. She said basket weaving at NASCAD had the highest dropout rate of any course in the country because
Wow.
you take basket weaving for a laugh and then day one you realize I can't make the things go together and no one it's
I can't
difficult.
weave.
It's so much more difficult than anyone takes even considers.
And now she's a surgeon.
No, she didn't take basket weaving. She just knew people that were taking basket weaving. No, she's a geologist. She's actually a city planner in HRM
Uh-huh.
because she couldn't cut it as a basket weaver.
She got into basket weaving.
Anyway, allow me to start the show as per proper. I am Ross. Joining me is my co-host Ian, and of course, as an extra special guest tonight, we have with us Rob of Great Roads Brewing, and are attempting to drink NS Dry. My mind went blank for a moment, and I wondered if I ever pronounced drink Nova Scotia Dry. Do I always say drink NS Dry? You'd think 147 times, 56 podcasts. You'd think I'd remember what I
Actually,
say.
technically, that makes us adversaries. Now that I think of it, because I'm making the beer, you're trying to drink the beer. Who wins? We're adversaries now.
Is this like the immovable object hitting the
Well,
unstoppable, whatever it is?
it feels like an unsurmountable goal to drink the province dry,
Yeah.
to have absolutely everything. Because if we just been paying attention to what's going on in the Maritime Craft Brew Facebook group, Ian and I, we drink 2 or 3 beers a week to talk about them. We are falling woefully behind everybody else. We are not drinking near enough.
Yeah.
So I think I call it a good pace, but at the same time, I don't think it's ever going to happen. We're never going to
Very
run.
happily, we're not keeping up with the production and the seemingly the week to week introduction of new beers in the market. And it's nice, isn't it? Because can you imagine? Because we kind of had this conversation maybe a year or so back, didn't we, Ross? Even a year or so back, where I was thinking, if we do like 2 or 3 a week, then we're gonna run out of this. This won't go.
You actually said that. You said that.
Yep.
You said, won't we run out?
Yeah, nowhere near.
Yeah, we had the category manager of craft beer at the brewery for a meeting today, and he talked about the growth in the category, stuff like that, and how many SKUs there are and stuff like that. So
yeah,
and it's I'm assuming up is the short
slow
version.
up. Yep.
I can certainly remember not that long ago a time when there was some propellers and a few garrisons in the LC, and that was it. That was, oh look, here's this little cute niche bit of, hey, here's the Not Keats and here's the Not Labatt Blue. Oh, okay, neat, it's fun. But it's there is a representation. I know the number is something bizarre, like 72, 75, something like 75 craft breweries operating in Nova Scotia. I know there's not all 75 are in every single NSLC.
No, I think he said there's only actually about 50 of the breweries total are in various NSLCs.
That's still pretty darn good, especially for the size of some of these ones. There are, I mean, the nano breweries especially.
Yeah. Well, what they talked about today was actually how they do sort of which stores you get into, stuff like that, and the category management, because they all, they don't want. And it kind of makes sense, as much as I would love Cape Breton to drink our beer instead of Breton Brewing or something like that, it's harder for us to get it to them. So it's only NSLCs that can get it. And I'm going to repeat time and time again, come visit the brewery. We have way more selection than what you can get of ours at the NSLC. So, it almost would prefer it to be more hyper local in order for the people who can come to the brewery go, oh, that's a nice beer. They have more. I should go try them.
I always explain that the best part about doing this show was during the pandemic, we combined my wife's love of going on road trips and my love of finding breweries and beer in general, where we would go to these places and we would come back with, oh, look at this, you could only get this at the store. And so we have a closet full of things that we just kind of collect that you can't always get in the NSLC. And a large over proportion of what we drink is not available province wide. So you say, hey, we're trying this one from Hell Bay down in Liverpool. Can you get it? Yeah. Well, no. But it's delicious, so you should get yourself, go on a road trip. Go down to the South Shore. Go visit all of these ones. Go take a full loop around and have a sip, have a flight, and it's absolutely worth it. Same for Cape Breton, same kind of thing, North Shore. But I think before we went live, we actually, Ian was asking you about the difference between competition and camaraderie, and you did say, and I think that hyper local, I think fixating on the hyper local thing means it's easier to be a camaraderie than a competitor, where you're not saying, oh, Big Spruce put out an IPA the same week we did, those jerks. It's quite a different market. People don't travel far for beer except me.
No, I include beer in all my road trip plans.
Oh, good. I'm not.
Road trips, brewery to brewery. So.
Yep. 2 years ago, my wife said, I want to go visit Quebec City. And my mind immediately went, okay, And then I started thinking, "Well, how am I going to find a bunch of Quebec City breweries? How am I going to do that?" And we had them; they were all mapped out, and we had a walking tour. It was, yeah, it was. It's
Can't
the only
imagine.
thing. It's the only thing in my life I organize. I think is beer
Yeah.
consumption.
Well, but that's just it. Like when my wife and I are going on a cruise here starting Sunday,
Right.
and the cruise ship has it's not the one with the brewery on board, but it has a brew house. They call it a brew house, or I can't even
Wow.
remember. But they have 55 different bottled beers and 20 different draft on tap. So I am my untapped profile is probably gonna have a pretty wild ride
Yep.
for 10 days. The rest later this month.
Add a few in there.
There can't be too many industries like this. Brand loyalty, it doesn't figure into it. I mean, you are, you just said you're the master brewer by head brewer by default, but you love to try other breweries' concoctions and
Yes.
and thinking what and so there can't be many industries like that, I think, where people would openly go to other people's and drink their stuff as well. I can imagine maybe probably chefs might do it, etc. But you can't imagine too many places where they would quite happily take in as many of the not competitors, but you know what I mean, same people in the industry, and spend money and promote those places as well. It's but it's through everyone's mutual love of the amber liquid. It's
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah, and then I live a 7-minute walk to the Village Tap House here off Larry UTEC in Bedford, and I love going there. And like, you know, I remember one time I made a social media post that I was there, and I tagged Tanner Brewing in it because the first beer I had was one of theirs. They liked it right away, so I looked at what else was on the wall of theirs and had them all. You know, and you know, like, why wouldn't you do that? Because little places like that, like as I mentioned before the show, the craft brewing industry itself in Nova Scotia needs that combined education of the public about better beer, and we can only do that by getting them to try different beers.
Yeah.
Now, as I mentioned to you guys before, I'm from BC originally, and so I watched their craft beer start in the 90s. And so I've watched that industry grow because I've lived back and forth in BC a number of times over the years. So to see where Nova Scotia brewery craft beer industry itself is and where it's going, I see the similar path. I personally am saying it's about 15 years behind, but that is an education of the public, to get the public interested in trying more craft beer.
Mm.
We're trying. I mean, this is kind of the whole point, part of the purpose of this whole thing. So first up, and sadly, I mean, the only sad thing is we have had this one before, but we have recommended this one before. The Old Biddies, the Old Biddies Patrick O'Neill's Irish Red, which we have had, and I still call this my favorite Irish red ale of the craft breweries in the province. Now, this immediately, when cracking this immediately brings up the elephant in the room, which is we are not talking about Old Biddy's Brewery anymore. We are talking about Great Roads Brewery, as per the icon on your shirt. We have talked to Keith, the brewer of Old Biddy's Brewery, previously. I think we talked to him last year, and then reached out again. Or you talked to me again, and so you are the new, well, like you said, only brewer right now.
I go with brew guy.
Old Biddy's changed hands, sold all the recipes. All the recipes went with, thankfully, to Great Roads Brewing, and now you are the brew guy for Great Roads Brewing, and that's where we sit. But with a lot of these, the previous recipes, Old Biddy's, the Irish Red, Patrick O'Neill's Irish Red, being one of them, so they stay on as, I don't want to call them legacy beers, I guess.
Well, you will see a label change in approximately 250 cans. I say that because I packaged the latest batch recently and put new labels on them.
We saw your canning facility while we were there the other day, mate.
Yeah,
That's the first time I've seen. Actually, you were very graciously took us around your establishment there, and I've not, even though I've been into a number of the craft breweries in the province. Ross has been into significantly more than I have. I've never been invited to go walk around the back and see some of the magic taking place behind. And you are canning them right in your establishment, which is quite different from what Ross.
I don't know if you mean if I haven't seen
the last time
all the canning operations at many of the places. Sea Level used to have theirs. They had theirs right there in the shop, which I enjoyed seeing. But I don't know if you mean I've seen a lot more canning operations or the bowels in behind.
I was actually referring specifically to the premises itself. You were surprised, of course, when I said, "Oh, I'm in the Great Roads place in Sackville," and you were like, "It looks nothing like where I went a little while ago." And of course, this was highlighted. Of course, this is during. It was very much at the beginning of the pandemic, was it not?
Yeah, I started doing a lot of my explorations early on, and that was Old Biddies, and it was. I'm not sure if it was a new location, and you were only using. Or they were using part of it.
So I can completely answer all that. So what the layout we have now that you guys saw on the weekend, that was kind of the plan A when Keith and Chris first started. But then due to the pandemic and all the social distancing and all your space requirements, they couldn't have tables in the space they had. So they took over another section of the strip mall at the basically door number 4, whereas right now the brewery's 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, okay.
The 2 is the main door you guys came in. Then there's 1 for the office, which has storage in behind it. Then you have the other one that's now vacant, was our tap room before.
And I used to say I love the beer, but I hated the location because it felt like an old pizza joint. And nothing made me happier into walking in. And I took the picture. This is the picture that I took the other day in behind me, and the taps over there, and all the kegs, kilns,
fermenters. Yeah.
That okay. There's proper words for everything that I don't know. But I just so much happier to walk in there. It reminded me of a much more comfortable and inviting type of thing. So I'm glad that the brewery got through that little tiny hiccup of location. Well, not so much location, but more just aesthetic.
Layout.
Yeah. Decor. I think that's the one that they sometimes give in restaurant reviews. Regardless, the delightful color of the Patrick O'Neill's Irish Red, a 5.0 Irish Red ale. It's got that was it. The description on the can: Patrick is nothing fancy, a simple, balanced Irish Red, and it is. It's the best one, but it's I think the benchmark that I would judge all other Irish Reds to say it needs to be more like this.
So that's one comment that we get a lot about the balance of the beers. Now I'm going to throw as many props towards Keith Forbes as I can. He is an evil, mad scientist genius when it comes to recipes. He does make and design really nice beers, and I've seen him, sit down with me and someone else and come up with a plan of what we would like for a beer, and then he literally puts it together, and it comes out a really good beer.
That's outstanding. I have always enjoyed what I get at Old Biddies, and that was we mentioned this was the rebranding over to Great Roads Brewing, and I'm gonna have to start to get used to seeing the icon for it, because for a while if I saw the Old Biddies, the little cartoon lady with a big frowny face on her, I said, "Ooh, I know that one's gonna be good," and I would always pick it up and try to grab it. So I have to just deprogram myself. I was programmed to know that it was going to be good when I saw that.
We were massively surprised when we did these. Can you remind me? Have you got a history of when that? Well, of course you do have on your spreadsheet. But how long ago was it that we looked at these Irish Reds, Ross? Would it be within the last year?
The first time we tried the Old Biddies Irish Red?
Yeah, because I'll say to Rob now that, and we said at the time, I'm not massively a red beer fan, to be honest. I find they're listen. If it were a straight choice between walking into a pub and having a Keith's or a local red, I would go for the red. And that's I'm not I don't want to dump all over Keith's, by the way. That's a horrible thing to say. What I'm saying is, I would go with something a little bit more malty.
And this is the balance that I get from this.
Lagery stuff. Every time, but I've never been particularly excited about red beers. I don't find them that.
You said that when I brought out the red.
This is exactly the opposite, because when we had it, we said, "Wow, this is full of flavour. It's got." Did you find out when it was, Ross?
September 2021.
It's oh yeah, just
2 and a bit.
My God, 2 years ago.
It was early. It was early on.
That's crazy.
But I felt like that was a pivotal moment, because all of a sudden you said, "Wait a minute, should I be drinking red beers now?"
Yeah. It hasn't. I've not had an epiphany with reds, by the way. But like you said, this seemed to be the benchmark by which reds, that certainly within the province that we had tried. It's so full of bite and flavour, and it's maltier than reds than most of them, which is obviously right in our ballpark, because we love the maltier than the hoppier beers for sure. And it's smooth.
Yes.
What did you pull yours out of the fridge? Are you a devotee of? I know you're not, Rob. You're not big into the ice cold. We talked about that the other day. The old cold is not a flavour, and people tend to have their beers way too cold. Mine was popped into the fridge just for 10 minutes, just to cool them down a tiny little bit. Other than that, they're.
I grabbed these from the cooler at work and brought them home with me today, and so. They came out of the fridge a couple hours ago.
Okay.
I don't think might have touched the fridge since I bought them. Oh no, wait, these were ones that we got from you just the other day, right?
Yeah.
Not since we were in there the other day, but they sat upstairs, and I kept thinking, I wonder if I should refrigerate those, but nope, I'm going full flavor today. This is my plan.
Yeah, because that's actually an interesting point you brought up. Is that flavors, and even bad flavors, get enhanced when the beer is warm. So a cold beer can also hide a bad beer.
Oh, interesting.
Because so Keith and I, about a year or so ago, went to a off flavors testing, where they actually put in drops into beer that would mimic the taste of certain beers gone wrong. And we drank some really ugly tasting beers.
God. Well, okay, just to punish yourself, was there must have been some sort of educational purpose for doing this.
So it was put on by Jeremy Slonwhite. He's a local BJCP guy, and he had arranged for the little vials of the additive to come up, and so we actually went through each one, and it was like, okay, this is what happens if it's over oxygenated, or doesn't have a proper yeast dump, or if this one has, bad hops, or there was, mold in the malts, or different things like that. And it would describe the taste, and you would try to pick it up, kind of thing. And some of them were like baby vomit, and other, it was quite entertaining.
Oh my God.
So are you saying that by putting them then, or serving them at colder temperatures, you can mask some of these crappier flavors?
Yeah, that's what we discovered, is that it got more wild. The bad taste got worse as it got warm.
Interesting.
I mean, I've kind of experimented with that once or twice myself, because I've been places and even having a cold beer out the fridge, someone says, "Oh, do you want a Molson Canadian?" I said, well, if it's all you got, give it to me quick, and I'll drink it in like 9 seconds before it warms up, and that's fine. I'll deal with it. But for some reason, someone always hands me a warm Corona, and I don't understand why. It's like it's not an ice cold Corona, and I think, oh, I'm not going to enjoy this. But I've gone to places like a tap room, and they will have everything is on tap, and I say, ooh, I'll try that one. It calls itself a spicy brown ale. I think, oh, that sounds really, really good. And they pour it for me. And the outside of the glass is frosting up. It's poured so cold. And I think, oh, and it just tastes like ice water. It's like a frosty cold. There's no flavor to it. So I hold it in my hands and I walk around and I just socialize. And I have spent full hour and a half waiting for my beer to warm up so that I can taste it.
Yeah, well, I've actually entered because of that education. I've sort of introduced that into my quality control, where before we package, I'll pull half a pint off the fermenter out of the takeout port, and I'll just set it on a table and leave it. Then what I will do is a little while later, after it's had a chance to warm up, I will pour off another half pint and then compare the two, warm versus cold, to see what differences I can see.
Okay, that's a really good idea.
Well, that's what we learned off that, right? And so if there is something off about it, I would know about it before we package it to give me a chance to potentially do something about
it. Not the reason, but the best part of inviting the brewers on, so yourself from Great Roads Brewing, is the first question is, which beers would you like to talk about? And we've skipped a little past just the fact that, we both love the Patrick O'Neill Irish Red, and I'm sorry to say that I have already finished it. It's so good. I love it that much.
I'm just going slow, but actually, before you get too far, I want to talk a bit about Keith's naming convention and the comedy value of this. So do you understand where the name came from?
I do, yeah. From the Canada Heritage Minute.
Yes. And that's why if you think back, we actually had a Molly Johnson dry Irish stout.
I think he mentioned that too, yeah. And then we had the conversation about Catherine Royale.
Yeah,
and who said she needed to keep her proud Irish name, and then we've been down the rabbit hole at least once. Ian is looking with a blank look on his face because he didn't grow up in Canada watching these wonderful Canada Heritage Minutes.
Well, you'll have to Google it and send him a link.
In between episodes of The Raccoons,
the Irish Orphans,
and Four on the Floor, while you're trying to catch up to all your television and watching the Canada Heritage Minutes. I remember, I think the best part was as a young person, as an 11-year-old kid watching it, and whenever one would come on, you'd get a little mad. Like, this again. But looking back, there is nothing but fondness for just about every Canadian who went through watching these commercials.
Just 1 second, because I only know what you're talking about, the heritage moments, because there's one that you always used to do is the little kid saying, "Oh yeah, what do you say?" Just Winnie the. I don't know, just Winnie the Pooh. That's what she always used to say to me, and it made me say to you. I was scratching my head, thinking, "What is she talking about?" But it's something that she remembers watching.
I can watch that one in my head just by saying those words.
Me too. Yeah,
we just know them.
Yeah.
Someone's going to need to do a Canada Heritage Minute.
Robin, yeah.
A part of our heritage is knowing all of the Canada Heritage Minutes. Like a group of people sitting around in a circle just saying to each other things like, oh, but I need these baskets back. And I think that would be outstanding. I need to watch that Canada Heritage Minute of people going back to their youth and thinking, oh, I know all of these ones. I know them so much. Ship on fire. Stop train. They're all there.
Did these mean something to you? Yeah, all of them. Are they all 80s? Were they the majority of them? Were the 80s or 70s or 80s or something like that?
I guess I'm going to say mid to late 80s up to now. Okay. They're still making some.
Oh, are they really?
They're still making them. I haven't watched one in a while.
I've got some binge watching ahead of me this weekend.
They're a Canada Heritage Minute. You have like maybe an hour and a half to catch up on these ones. I think you'll do it. But the reason that I felt bad that I'd already finished my Patrick O'Neill is because, Rob, the question is, why did you want us to have the Patrick O'Neill today?
Well, because it's one of my favorite beers. And, It's actually one of the ones that I think is a good introduction for a lot of people into craft beer, because it does introduce them to the malts, and that's a big part of craft beer is the malt selection, because that is the crazy mad scientist Keith, like you're just like a chef with a recipe. Your malt mix, a dash of this, is a bit like a witch's potion as you're putting it all together. And, so as the Patrick O'Neill's Irish Red is a very good introduction to craft beer for anyone. If you like Rickard's Red, you're going to love this. Pure and simple. It's a good, all well-rounded beer.
Ian hates this story, but Rickard's Red was my introduction to flavor.
I think this is a poison chalice to begin your foray into craft ales, especially reds. Because if you go in drinking this one as your first foray into craft ales, and you start with this one, you're going to think, "Oh, I've got to try all the other reds out there." But unfortunately, the bar is pretty damn high with this one. So as a result, you'll go in very high, and it's very difficult to...
Well, there's the answer there is you ask them what their goal for craft brewing is. Hey, are you going to drink lots of craft beer? Here, try one of these reds. Are you going to brew craft beer? Here you go. Here's the Patrick O'Neill. This is what you need to make.
Yeah. So the NSLC category manager gave us a really interesting stat today. You know how today's world is about data collection and control.
Yeah.
And so they use air miles cards. Ian ran away.
We lost him. He'll be back.
Yeah. But they use air miles cards as the data point to track people's repeat purchases. And in the craft beer segment, the average is 25% of the craft beer sales are people buying the same beer again.
25%.
Only 25%. So that means the craft beer drinkers are changing up their selections.
Okay.
Or are they just exploratory?
That's the big thing. Yeah, people in the craft beer section, people are moving around. So if only 25% are repeat offenders of buying someone's beer over and over again. Like that was just a really interesting stat he gave us today, because I would have expected it, because you think of all your Budweiser and Coors drinkers, they are hardcore, they won't touch anything else.
Yeah.
Whereas craft beer drinkers are more than willing to play the field and try the different beers.
And even after we found favorites, we still try. All right, we got to try. Well, I mean, I have put it on myself to try it all. Yeah. So I can't speak for someone who's I don't want to say a normal beer, a craft beer enthusiast who does not want to try to drink everything on their own podcast. There must be a category for that somewhere. But I'm always looking for something that will come close to this one. And
what a better way? That's like the best way to keep track of which ones you've tried is you put it online.
It's the only way I could be. I said I thought about making a list because I couldn't remember what ones I've tried before, but then I decided no, might as well just do a live show.
Yeah, there you go.
That's much easier to keep track.
The problem is, Ross. The problem is they're both reds. There are two reds here. Now, because the bar is set so high with this, we're going to another red. I don't know whether you're going next or not. It doesn't matter. But my question to Rob straight away is Irish Red versus Red IPA. What makes this an Irish Red?
Actually, that's the fun part is I'm really not sure. My mad science skills, when it comes to that specifics, I don't have them. And so with Keith being the mad scientist, I know there's a lot I still need to learn. I was sort of the casual intern and who got thrust into the only brewer job. So I openly admit And I even told the new owner, I said, if you find a more experienced brewer, I'm happy to go back down to part time. Um, because being retired after 31 years in the Air Force, um, I'm only looking for a vacation fund and motorcycle parts. So working full time wasn't my
Mm.
idea. Um,
Mm.
and so, basically, Keith taught me how to make the recipes well, and I've kind of been with Keith. I learned how to tweak the recipes, and he's taught me a few little tricks about do this. That is just little smidge things, and it's kind of neat now that I kind of have all the leeway myself to play, but I don't really want to get too far from his
Yeah.
standard because
Mm.
he made good beers, and I just don't
You're
want to
right.
stop that.
What was that, Ross, that you read about that? There was something, if I remember rightly, that said that all reds are Irish reds. Did you
We
remember something like that?
we thought we found that at one point where a red ale, because we were buying just red ales, and then we noticed that a lot of them were Irish reds. And we found one that called itself an American red, and it's the only one because we read something online that said that if it's a red ale, then usually it's an Irish red ale, and there don't seem to be another type of a red ale that isn't an Irish red. Now this next one, the Disco Inferno, cue waka chicka noises, but is a red IPA. So
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
it is not an Irish red. It is just a different style of IPA, and we've had lots of different styles of IPAs. We've had the black IPA, the New England IPA, the hazy IPA, the juicy
Yeah.
IPA, which is apparently both two different things. But the red
Yeah.
IPA seems to be, and it's the first sentence, is where malts meet hops.
Yeah. So this one, it's kind of like it's a bit of a mix of the malt blends, sort of between our IPAs with some of the red. So it's a bit of a mixed recipe
Mm.
in the malts, and then your hop build is way different than the Irish red, and it's more alike to a IPA. And definitely the hop component is a lot larger.
Mm-hmm.
The IBUs is way higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes from a 28 to a 43, and the ABV pops up to a 6.5. But
Heavy.
I'm curious because when you say a malt, well, it says if malts meet hops. When I first started trying it, I've tried a couple of them. A black IPA that comes through as a very very malty IPA. It's got elements of both, and so I'm wondering if this is maybe nearly to a black IPA, but not fully.
I'd have to actually check our black IPA recipe. I know we have one.
Oh.
I'd have to actually compare them.
Yum.
Um,
Ooh. Now,
you know,
and this
Caramel and chocolate. To finish with, it says on the can.
Oh, right. I forgot to keep
That's
reading.
exciting. Because it's not normally flavors you associate with IPAs for sure.
but it's in the malts that we get that sweetness.
The floral and the citrusy notes, of course, is all over IPAs usually. So, like they were saying there, malt meeting hops. This could be a match made in heaven. And we haven't had this one, Ross. The Irish red we are familiar with and love it. This is quite exciting, is it not? And the can, by the way, is really cool. Disco Inferno thing going on here.
The disco ball
big
on
miracle.
fire. Is
Yeah,
is this a newer? I don't want to say a newer recipe, but maybe 1 year.
No, this is one of the original launch recipes that they had at the beginning.
Damn it! Why didn't I pick up a can of this? Maybe I think that was back when I was still avoiding things that said IPA on them, and I was curious about everything else. And it's taken us a while. Well, taken me a while for sure. Where I finally just broke down and said, "Listen, I can't buy anything else at the LC right now. Everything that we have not tried is an IPA. We need to start knocking these out."
Yeah,
That is
IPAs are the largest category in the craft beer section.
And
By like, there's more IPAs than everything else combined.
I don't want to blame Alexander Keith's, but I kind of blame Alexander Keith's because it says India Pale Ale on their can. So and I feel like there was a bit of a try ours if you like IPAs, and do you like IPAs? And I said, well, wait a minute, I like India Pale Ale, and that's what that stands for. So yes, I must like IPAs. Boom, big seller. And it equates, and that the taste of an over hopped craft IPA tastes exactly like an Alexander Keith's that has been sitting in the fridge for 9 months too long.
looks like a classic, if I may say so. I grew up drinking bitters in my teens, Rob, and I've been drinking bitter my entire life. Every time I'm in the UK, ale, darker bitters. This looks like someone's just poured me an English bitter straight from the hand pull in my local.
It looks like it's got an accent.
And if I'm
like, if you pour it, it just says, "Hello, governor."
But the ESB by Propeller, which is one of my go-tos. You were talking earlier on about having some kind of brand loyalty, Ross. You still.
I mean, I certainly I have brand favorites. Yeah.
This look and feel of it, and I haven't even tasted it yet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tickle me.
I actually went to the Propeller Tap Room on Bedford Highway last Friday I went down there and tried a few of their brews I haven't had in a while or ever. Not sure if you're frozen or lost in thought.
I am lost in thought.
There's none of that. There's none of that IPA, overly hopped, single hopped, citrusy smash that I associate with IPAs. It's Barbara, excuse me. I'm getting it there. I'm getting some floral notes there. It might not be very nice to say, but just as I belched, I got some of it. That's not the way to appreciate it.
Write that on the can. Tastes just as good on the way back up.
But it's subtle floral. Rebecca, please.
What is happening? You're trying to offer that up. I'm not getting the finish of caramel and chocolate, and I'm not sure why. It almost feels like you get the floral, and it's that little bit of hop. It's a delicious, what I would call a tolerable IPA up front, which just probably means that it's almost weak to IPA favorers, or if someone's looking for a really
I wouldn't, the big hardcore IPA guys, I wouldn't put this to them. Because they want, IBUs in the 80s.
Yeah.
And they want to have their spine shiver. But when you want a nice balanced beer that you can have one or two and enjoy it, you got to have that balance.
And I feel like that is the balance that I'm getting, and I'm getting a little bit of the floral and the citrus at the beginning. But for some reason, I think my confused face was, I actually tasted the gap where the chocolate and the caramel should be, and I went,
and the sweetness.
There feels like there's something missing here, because I feel like I'm not quite getting it at the tail end where I was expecting.
There might be a slight carameliness late, but the chocolate, I'm kind of missing it too.
Me too.
You a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone were to hand me this and say, "Oh, here, have an IPA," and of course my gut reaction would be to say, "I'm probably not going to enjoy this very much."
I would get excited as soon as it poured out in this color, and say, this does not look like grapefruit juice. We're in for a good time."
Because it is more balanced, and there's more hoppiness to it. But I do get that latent. It's it does have its floral hoppiness there on the tongue, but I don't get the chocolatiness that I was kind of excited about.
Well, the smell also the smell kind of is what gets you the sweetness, where you start thinking you're getting excited about the chocolate. Yeah, because it does have a sweeter smell.
Yeah, and the caramel, there is definitely something there.
I think if it wasn't written on the can, I would not say it.
That's fair.
And we find in reading sometimes we say, okay, and we read it, and then we say, all right, there, put your brain into absolutely lock in, find this flavor, just focus very, very hard on what you're getting. And on every mouthful, you try a 2 mouthful, you try one little sip, you try a big mouthful, you're like, yeah, I think I can just barely get it in there if I really, really, really try.
When you go yourself, Rob, when you go to sample other places and you might have a flight, you were at Propellers again recently, you say, do you, in the past, Ross and I were devotees of the couple of sips of water between different brews to try to cleanse our palate. But we've had a couple of guys say, it's absolute nonsense. Just go ahead and drink the next one. And then you get like that full difference of flavors. And they're more apparent to you if you don't drink water in between.
Yeah, I don't drink water in between, and I normally don't do flights. I usually just pick a pint and then pick another pint.
Okay.
I have been tricked by flights before. So I can see where that makes sense, because if you have a little tiny split, try this, and unless it's a over the top 80 IBU juicy grapefruit IPA, which you're definitely gonna get a taste. Now I have been not on purpose, but I've tricked my own taste buds, where my taste buds say, this is delicious, try this in this tiny little sample. I'll have a pint of that, and you get it, and after the first 2 mouthfuls, you think, oh, that's not what. That's not what I was. Not what I was tasting in a tiny little 4-ounce glass.
Yeah, so I think the flights are good for people, like a lot of times when we get someone come in, they're new to craft beer. When you ask them what they drink, and they'll say Keith's or Coors Light or something like that, I will usually try to direct them towards a flight, because that way, if they don't really like one of them, they won't feel bad. I don't want to sell, unless they're okay saying, yeah, I'll take a pint, I'm pretty sure I won't mind it. But if someone comes in and they're really just not feeling the vibe of craft beer, you say, well, try a flight, because then it's only 4 ounces of each.
Yeah.
I have never been sadder than and this has happened many times, being at a establishment and leave when I go to leave, and there's some people have left their place behind. There's paid their bill, gone out the door, and there have been 3/4 full glasses in an entire flight for like three guests or so, and I look at it and I think, 1, what a waste of beer. 2, how could you have a sip of a 4-ounce glass and then say, nope, not for me? I feel like you need to, if you're willing to commit enough to get a flight of beers, I feel like you owe it to try the full small amount in the glass. I don't understand this giving up immediately.
Yeah.
Well, we've had some people come in, and I've sat with them, and we've put together like a couple sample flights and worked through them. And some people, like I'll take, for example, our Orange American Wheat. It has coriander in it. Some people, coriander tastes like dish soap. And that's just the way, so that beer to them tastes like dish soap. There's just nothing people get out of it,
There's a few spices and herbs that do that.
Yeah.
Genetically, and through no fault of anyone, they're just you are just programmed, wired something differently. It's in your DNA.
Your body reacts to coriander a certain way. Yeah.
A bit like me with celery.
You don't
if you
celery?
Put a celery beer on, Rob, I would struggle, I have to say.
So would I, but that's a different story.
Celery beer,
Celery
like
beer
the
tastes
Pine Sol beer that Ross and I tried. Neither of us were big fans of that.
It was probably the only beer that we've tried that I would label as undrinkable. Most everything we could almost always finish the can, the pint, the something, but there was one time where we said, "Okay, I get it. It was a novelty Christmas thing, but whew, it
But some of the sours, of course, and I understand that you're not exactly a huge fan of the sours either, Rob. When we met the other day,
No,
struggled with some of them.
I'm also one of those guys who again, so we want some legacy commercials for fun. The Men of the Squared Table was like a Bud Light commercial, like back one of the Super Bowls in the '90s, and they had the big book of rules, and the men of the table would decide on some of the rules, and one of the rules was don't fruit the beer.
Yeah.
Now,
so if you ever stuck on Google again, yeah, it's like Men of the Squared Table. I just can't remember the specific details, but WWF wrestlers and
the popularity of Radlers has decreased, and Ian brings
even
up
the NSLC guy mentioned that today. That is dropping as a their stats are dropping.
but sours are firing up. And Ian, we talk about this because we had a couple of Radlers a few years ago, like the last of the Radlers, I feel like, for the craft ones. And you mentioned shandies, and I think there was one Boxing Rock had a thing, and they just called it the shandy or something like that. And that was it was basically lager lager and lime almost.
Okay.
But the
I can
sour is so odd.
That surprises me because I can understand seasonally the popularity of Radlers stroke shandies decreasing because it is more of a summery or a warmer weather drink because it's a little more it's less malty, it's less it's less heavy, and it's a lighter option. And I said to Ross, Rob, that I would do this quite frequently in the warmer months. We do get warmer months in the UK, believe it or not, but in the warmer months, what I might do is just put a tiny little bit of Sprite or 7-Up into the top of a beer, just, a couple of fingers full, just to give it just a slightly sweeter, lighter feel to drinking it. I could drink stout till the cows come home, don't get me wrong, but if it's a hot summer's day, sometimes I like something a little lighter. Now, I can understand it if seasonally the Radler's sales drop off, but you're saying as a complete style of beer, it's losing its popularity over time. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, that's we were discussing sales results and how categories are going, and he said Radlers were dropping. Now, maybe that's a seasonal thing, but if it was a seasonal thing, I think he would have said something, because we've all seen seltzers drop off. So we've took a bunch of ours off tap. We've only got one left on right now, just for a few diehard regulars. But
could I counter then that maybe the Radler sales have suffered as a result directly of the increased popularity of sours for people that might want something a little more fruity and a little sweet? Well,
that was going to be my assumption.
yeah.
Also based on me not knowing anything.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And the other side of it is something my daughter told me when I brought her in, is she actually said she doesn't like beer, but she actually liked the sour because it didn't taste like beer.
Yeah,
that's what my wife says.
Yeah. Now the sours are a nightmare to brew. But I know I have to bring ours back no matter how much I don't like it.
The nutcase purists will tell you that sours were one of the first beer recipes in existence.
Yes.
It all depends. Every time we look up a beer, it always says this is one of the first beers made by the monks. And I'm like, okay, which is it? Is it the browns? Is it the really malty browns, or is it the really dirty, the darker ones? Is it the ones that were basically based on just make a loaf of bread and turn it into a liquid, or was it? So there's the stouts, the browns, or the sours. They're all kind of fighting for. We were the first one on the block.
Mm.
We occasionally read stuff on the internet, and it's all over the place.
Yeah. Well, now you got me thinking. I've got some Googling I want to do because I've got some thoughts on when you talk about the sours because the pH level goes down. I'm wondering, does that make them less likely to, or does it go up? I can't remember. It's been so long.
God, they taste like it's pretty damn high. It's an uncomfortable drink. The really, really sour ones. I have my favorites, but much like an IPA, my favorites in the sour category are what people would consider, oh, that's barely a sour at all. That's just juice-flavored lager.
But when you make it more acidic, I'm wondering, if you think back to, like, again, the purists and the people arguing what was first, by making it more acidic, does that make it less likely to go bad, for voyages and stuff?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Rebecca, you were saying, does the panel take questions from the audience? Do you have a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Does the panel take questions?
Yes, the panel. I think the panel takes questions, gentlemen.
Of course.
Rebecca?
I mean, yeah, we're waiting on them coming up in the chat channel, but there's no one there, so please do.
I want to ask you a question.
Does Old Betty's make a porter?
Does Old Biddy's stroke Great Roads Brewing make a porter?
Yes.
Yeah, the tall, dark, and handsome.
Tall,
I
dark,
drink
and
it.
handsome.
We had it only, yes.
You guys have had that.
And Rob was saying that thankfully you have a plan, certainly a business plan, is it not, to keep 2 good dark beers going year round, whereas some of them, of course, say, no, that's just a seasonal drink. We only, for us multi darker beer fans, we're like, oh, but you have promised.
Tall, dark, and handsome. It will remain a staple, and we hope to rotate another dark tap.
Isn't that good to hear?
When we were at the tap room, Ian and Ian's son Tristan actually joined us, and you both had Tristan definitely had a flight. I think Ian, you had a flight as well. And he asked me what I wanted, and I said I could try a flight of some things I didn't want, but I went no, I want a pint of the tall, dark, and handsome. It was the first thing I went for when I was there. So hopefully, if that does not give you my endorsement for what I wanted to have when I got there, that should. But
especially when you said Irish Red was your favorite.
Yeah. But I was in the mood for a dark beer because it's been a long, cold, lonely winter, and no one's feeding me enough dark beer recently. But the other side of that is that got me excited because you mentioned that you're gonna have the tall dark, the staple dark, and then a rotating dark, and then I think you actually said the words like an Irish stout or something. And my eyes, I was ignited with enthusiasm.
One of the other orphans.
Ooh.
You just referred, Tristan was there, my son, and he's a real cider man. He loves his ciders, my boy, probably even more so than beers. He's not massively into beer, but if it's his preference, when he goes into pubs, he likes to go for a couple of pints of cider. There was a cider in your brew house, Rob. Was it just a guest?
It was Lake City, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a guest tap. So we get, we get a lot of people coming in, and when we were just a tap room where we just served beer, we could only serve what we made. With the change of ownership and the change of setup we are now at an eating establishment. We have a restaurant as well. So we actually have a second liquor license that allows us to bring in guest taps like that. So I learned seltzers last year, and my boss is asking me to learn ciders this year. But right now, because a lot of times, people would come in and one person would go, well, I don't drink beer. Do you have wine? Do you have a cider? So the quickest thing for us to be able to bring in when we got our change to liquor license was getting in a local cider. So we contacted Lake City Cider and said, "Hey," so we have one of their ciders on tap, and people love it.
I love that idea. First off, it's great that you are able to stock other brewers' products, but I love even more the idea that someone's going to come into a local craft brewing establishment and say, "Yeah, I don't really drink beer. Have you got anything else?"
Amazingly enough, we get that a lot.
Going into a winery and saying,
Well,
"I don't drink wine. Do you have any beer?"
You could be dragged into a brewery kicking and screaming. You could just be a part of a crew or something like that, saying,
Yeah.
"Oh man, yeah, they all wanted to come here. What have you got?" And I much prefer. I'm a chocolate milk guy myself.
Yeah.
I'm not finding all that much on the internet. Apparently, it's saying that maybe Belgian lambic beers, and no one knows what type of beer was the very first one. But the cider conversation
The
brought up.
beers, by the way, are very similar to the kettle sours that we understand to be some of the earliest beers made anywhere in the world. Massively hoppy and very citrusy, and they still sell them in the liquor stores. The Chimay was a perfect example of them, and I've had plenty of those in the past.
What I'm learning here is that if beer was invented and first created by Sumerians in Mesopotamia in 4000 BC, but
I don't remember that.
hops were not used as an ingredient until the Middle Ages. It must have been more, because it's at barley beer, I think, was some of the original ones, and definitely of a higher malt category. So I don't see where these ancient sours are coming in from. But on the cider topic, it was asked, I think I was about 3 weeks in of saying, "Oh, I'm going to try all these beers." And I'm already fielding questions from friends and relatives saying, "Oh, what? Are you going to drink the ciders? Are you going to try the ciders too?" And I said, "Slow down.
No.
I'm going to drink the beers. When I run out of beers, yes, we'll talk about ciders, but not until then." But the problem has been that sours, goses, and Weiss are all considered beers, so we have to try. And I try to keep an open mind, and we try them. And, struggle through. I find some favorites, so that luckily I can, if someone says, "I really like a super sour, what do you like?" And I said, "Well, if you really like a super sour, try this one," because I could barely finish it. But if someone says, "Hey, I have to drink sours for a sour competition, but I really don't like them, which one should I get?" I'll say, "This one. This is the most tolerable sour that I could find. Go. Get as much of this as
You just
possible."
mentioned light beers. Rob, I didn't notice while I was there. There was a wheat beer, but that was the orange wheat. American
We have
orange
two
wheat?
wheat beers. We have
Yeah.
two. Yeah, we have the Orange American and a blueberry.
Blueberry. Of course, I had it on the flight. The blueberry wheat. That's right. Okay.
You talk
Buy some
about
beer.
you always ask me how I retain a memory for things that I've drank. I don't understand how you lose your memory for things you've drank so quickly. This was 3 days
Saturday,
ago.
yeah.
You're asking
I
about
like
things that you
beer.
did actually drink 3 days ago.
The Weiss beers have that, as we said, they've got that banana-y taste to them. It's
Oh,
really weird how
Yeah.
when you drink them, you're like, why does this taste of banana? Bananas haven't been anywhere near that product, yet they have that. They're all they all have that banana-ish, but I can't even say the word banana-ish smell and flavor to them. And how is that established? Is it just curious? It's just a meeting of
How does extra vanilla make you think creamsicle? I don't know.
Anyway, I like my Weiss beers. I love them, especially in the summertime.
I would love a Radler. I would love Radlers to come back because honestly, I would prefer a Radler in the summer than a sour in the summer. And even though the summer is about the only time that I can really tolerate a sour, and it's got to be quite hot. And then I say, "All right, fine, I'll try your sour." And I think, yeah, okay, I sort of get it. But honestly, A, I'd rather have a beer, and B, I'd much prefer a Radler over this. If you want to have a fruit flavored beer, even though, like you say, thou shalt not fruit the beer, I would always take a radler. There's so much more they're easier to drink. The sour only reminds me of my childhood, where you would find, hot pepper flavored candies, and you basically just you wanted to watch your friends suffer. So sour beer, much like the very strong, the huge IPAs, they feel like some sort of juvenile contest to watch your friends suffer.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not why they were invented, unless subconsciously everyone just wants to watch their friends suffer.
Well, there is a sport in that, so you got to admit that.
Yes, it's why
'Cause,
towel snapping is
let's
a
talk about some
thing.
of the guy rules, right? Oh, that tastes horrible. You want to try it?
My friend brings this up all the time. We have a favorite cartoon, and it's a comic strip, just one single comic strip of Sherman's Lagoon. If you watch the one, and it was about the shark, the turtle, and all the creatures that lived under the water. Mm-hmm. But there's one, and one of them they found, and it was just this yellow small ball, just this tiny little ball. It looked like a marble. And they picked it, and they said, "Oh, look at what I just found." And they looked at it and said, "Oh, look at that. Oh, gross. Oh, smell it. Oh, it smells really gross. Here, let me smell it again. Oh, yeah, gross. That smells really gross." And it just kept going back and forth with, try tasting it. Oh, I tasted it. Oh, yeah, lick that. Yeah, that tastes really, really gross. And the final panel was just above and beyond, where one of them had like chewed it up. I think it was sold expired bubble gum at the bottom of the lake, but he had blown this enormous bubble, but out of his nose, out of his nostril it was. So the final word was, "Try blowing it out your nose." And the other one just says, "Gross." And that was all there was to the conversation. They just kept trying to say, "Oh, do this. It's gross." And so yes, it's that.
Okay, but we haven't changed much.
No,
let's be realistic.
I'm a
When you're sitting
7-year-old
around,
boy
sitting around
every
a
now and then.
patio drinking with some of your friends, that same kind of thing will happen.
And you'll take the cap off your beer and hold it in your fingers and snap it down your elbow and hit your friends in the face. Yes, you will absolutely do that.
Rob, before we move on to the IPA, the meeting you were the other day, you were seeing where the sort of industry is going slowly. It was saying that the radlers were falling off, while the sours, Ross, you were saying, was sort of ramping up even further. Where do we sit with IPA? Seeing as you said there, they account for twice as many as all the others put together. We were led to believe by one of your colleagues in the industry there, another head brewer, that the peak had been reached by IPAs some months ago, and they were slowly beginning to go over the side, whereas the more maltier beers were beginning to make a bit of a comeback. Is that what was?
NSLC didn't say anything about that. Now, from my purview, behind the tanks that are behind Ross there, right now, I think what we're seeing is the IPA drinkers aren't switching off to other beers. It's just the brewers are now running out of things to do to make an IPA. You start looking at how far can you stretch the boundaries of an IPA, and now you've got so many different variants of an IPA that the category itself is, the West Coast IPA, the East Coast IPA, the No Coast IPA, the this IPA, the that IPA. And I even had a low calorie IPA down in the States last year, and I was like, okay, I'll try it, because why the hell not? Mm-hmm. And I think, and a part of me wonders if some of the breweries will put out an IPA, experiment with it, and if it's not selling, they'll take it away, not rebrew it. And so I think what might be happening is we're kind of reached the boundaries of where IPAs have gone, and it's not expanding anymore.
And if the curiosity of buyers has a lot more options, you don't just stick to the IPA. So maybe that's the only reason for IPA falling sales is, well, we've tried that. What else you got?
Yeah.
Especially when you say 25% of craft beer purchases are repeat purchases. So you run out of IPAs eventually. Have you tried? We have this conversation all the time where if you go with Propeller IPA, we've tried it and we went, ooh,
I had one on last Friday. Yep.
too much. And then Propeller's Double IPA, we go, well, this is okay. That's more drinkable. I can.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part is, I think the doubles are going to be what's, because now it's almost more in vogue to be the IPA purist, and so in my unprofessional opinion, a guy who just likes to drink beer, I think you're going to see that the IPA purists are probably going to start moving more towards the double IPAs and getting that extra kick in the hops.
So we then found also and just kind of sticking to the Propeller as a company, they then had on their triple IPA, the Leviathan, coming in something, it was at 10 or 11%. I don't know if you've tried this one. It's worth a gander because we just said, oh, come on, this is so ridiculous. It's gotten this ridiculous. We've got to try it. And we both tried a first gulp of an 11% triple IPA. And we both looked at each other and we immediately agreed, how on earth is this delicious? What is happening right now that this is the best of the three? Something was going on, and it was just impressively and so surprisingly quaffable. It didn't.
Yeah, and that's also the scary part is if you're going to start drinking 10% beers as a sit on the deck with your feet up, don't plan on doing anything else for the rest of the afternoon.
And we didn't. And I pointed out to everyone, I say, everyone owes themselves a can of triple IPA. It's not a kind of thing of, hey, we're having some friends over, I'm going to drink 3 triple IPAs. No, you are not. You are not going to sit down and have multiple ones of.
I think one of the big things about when you start looking at the, logistics of the doubles and triples is they are, as a profit margin item, you have to understand, you start looking at the grain build on those beers, and it's just a lot of material. So a brewery's not making the same profit margin on those beers because the hops and grain, you have to look at there still has to be a business model over making this beer.
I hadn't thought about the ingredients cost to something like that. So maybe it was just kind of a short passion project. But I feel it's been in the stores for a lot longer than I was expecting it to for what it is.
Well, the thing is, like, there are some good ones out there, and I'm not going to deny it. I do enjoy them myself too. And the challenge becomes, though, is are they a sustainable business model, or do you but for the purists. Because I know a few guys I follow on YouTube, they are hardcore, IPA purists, and if it doesn't have the right smell, they're like, oh, it's not. I'm not sure if this is a real IPA. It's little things like that. Like, and of course I laugh at them, and I'm the guy in the chat going, you pompous little punks, well, I think my latest comment was along the lines of, you don't get to call yourself a beer snob. Others have to call you a beer snob.
I've been called a beer snob in several of my my group chats on certain online.
It's okay for other people to call you that, but you can't declare yourself a beer snob.
This is the thing, Rob. I've gone on and agreed with them because they said, "Oh, you're a beer. I hate you people. You're beer snobs." And I've gone there and said, I don't mind accepting almost proud of the fact that I'm beer snob because there are certain things that aren't good enough for me. If it's going to be shitty, cold, piss weak beer, which sells by the bucketful, that I don't think is very good.
Yeah.
I'm quite proud of the fact that it's not good enough for me.
It's-
So I will try something else. And that, in its by very virtue of the fact that I'm saying it's not good enough for me, is being a snob about beer. And I am a self-confessed beer snob.
It's one of the things that I try to make sure that we do, because I know that Ian and I have particular tastes, but in order to
And you're
talk,
avoiding cracking the IPA, I've noticed, yeah.
I'm getting there. I want to crack. I'm so curious because, like I said, I have loved everything with the Old Biddies. Old Biddies Classic is over there on the can of the 7-day IPA. I've been asking us to do this on our IPA nights for the longest time. I'm so curious because I love everything. I'm so curious as to what's going to happen. I've been reading the label back and forth, but what keeps happening is I try to make sure that even as we always say we like a maltier beer. You got to know this about us. We like a maltier beer. We don't like a hoppier beer. But when we drink something we don't like, we'll tell you why we don't like it, and we'll tell you who probably would.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. That's the fun of it, right?
Because you could have a beer show, and I've watched the occasional person on Instagram. You know, they have their live things, and they drink it, a thing, and says, "Oh, I don't like this at all," and immediately put it down. I said, "Well, you have told me nothing. You've told me absolutely nothing outside of me doing a deep dive on your entire world
There's been
history."
a lot of beer shows that don't survive on the internet.
I mean, we should
But
have
anyway,
survived.
my glass has been empty for far too long.
That's true. Yeah, we got to crack open the old 7-day IPA. So 7-day IPA, it does say, and there's so many good things going on the side of the can. Our version of a no-coast IPA, far from a West Coast, but not sure to an East Coast either. Not sure to an. I'm not gonna grammar check you here. It has the bitterness.
There could be an error that I let through, but yeah.
But not sure to it. I think I'm just reading that wrong. It has the bitterness you expect from traditional IPA, but also delivers the juicy tropical fruit and citrus flavor to your taste buds. Think melon, stone fruit, strawberry, pear, and grapefruit. That's a lot of fruit. We're whipping up.
I'm getting a lot of fruit smell, though. That's the thing. Upon just popping the ring pull and getting that first stuff going up into my nose, I'm getting a lot of tropical stuff going on there, Ross. It's not just grapefruit. Quite often IPAs say to me, grapefruit, and that's it. And I'm like, oh, this is going to hurt.
I'm getting a big...
There's more to this. This is tropical fruits, and there's more to it.
I'm getting a big hop profile out of it, that is for sure.
Big hops.
There's a big hop build on this one.
Okay.
But actually, one thing I do want to talk about is the can. Because you guys are presenting, and this is almost the first public appearance of the new can logo for our 7-day.
Oh, I gave away the ending.
And it's going to be hitting the NSLC store shelves, replacing the old logo with the cartoon lady face. But I did want to pay homage to the original, and that's why we put the little bitty classic brand on it.
And I love that that's there. It's very cute.
Yes, a classic. How long was Keith brewing the 7-day IPA for, Rob?
He told me once. I think it's it was like 5 years before he actually started the before. So it might have been 2015, 2016-ish.
Okay.
He might be an IPA fan.
The last,
I forget.
Both the I beg your pardon. Both the red IPA and the Irish red. I poured them the same pace. They both gave about a finger, maybe a finger and a half's head. Significantly more. I look at Ross's. Significantly more head going on with this. I love I'll be careful what I say.
No. Just go right ahead. No, blurt it out. Say it. Go ahead.
I think we all love a beer with a bit of head on it. Is where I was going to go with that. You were saying
with
Rob,
a head on its shoulders.
Yeah, yes, one of the beers with the stout. Remind me, please. The stout.
Naughty or nice?
Yes. The head disappeared disappointingly quickly, and you said there was maybe an issue with that particular batch.
Not necessarily an issue with that particular batch. I think I carbed it on the low side. So I think for next year I want to up the carbonation. And it's it was in the ballpark, but I think it was just on the low end of what we really needed to enjoy.
Well, that's not happening with this.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it's not even any type of beer does that. But I mean, I cracked the top on this one, and it just started foaming out the top, and I knew I was going to spill it everywhere, and I pretty much did. It's got a little bit of cloudiness to it. It's not quite as crystal clear.
Well, I will also tell you that was only packaged 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, fresh as a daisy. This one.
It's not a hazy for sure. It doesn't have that look of the haziness about it. It's just a little cloud.
I love a hazy beer with a little bit of.
But we're not trying to call this one hazy. This one,
That's the thing that started bothering me. Is
stuff.
We started enjoying beers that had a bit of cloudiness to it. It doesn't need to be. And I love the one. And they even say around the top of the can, unfiltered. And I go, ooh, yes, this is when you get the good stuff. And we always talk about the flavor crystals or the sea monkeys still floating around in them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the really, really good stuff. But when they applied hazy as a flavor, and I suddenly went, oh, don't do that. Don't take my word from me.
Yeah, and that's one thing I like about craft beer. Because we had a guy in the tap room the other day, and he had a glass of our Pilsner, and he's a home brewer, and he was really impressed at how clear our Pilsner has dropped. Because over time, if you come in, you can tell the difference in the batch. As the kegs sit, it'll actually drop a little clearer.
Okay. The other thing I want to point out here is my original Old Biddy's Brewhouse pint glass. But this, one of the few breweries you can get the 20-ounce pint glass. Most of them just sell you the 16 or even the get out of town 14-ounce pint glass. But the full 20, this fits my 473 milliliter can of 7-day IPA proper like.
I just poured mine, Ross, into my German Stein.
Your broken German Stein.
You can see it. Even the entire contents, they're gone. They dropped into there, and it's just given that lovely. What do they call that again? The meniscus? No, what is it called? The meniscus?
You called it the meniscus, but that's only if there's a dome to the liquid. You're just this is the foam, so foam is different.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's sitting there like a little ice cream that I want to lick. In the glass.
Disappoint the children.
And it's got and it's added to the cloudiness because it's definitely unfiltered. Rob. Am I not correct there? You can see some stuff floating around in there. Oh my god!
I don't know what it says. I am getting a nice sweetened, but a fruit sweetened, and I'm excited because it does say a number of fruits at the bottom of this one: the melon, stone fruit, strawberry, pear, grape. I can see it moving towards a strawberry sweetness as opposed to a grapefruity sweetness.
I'm looking forward to this.
Yep.
Interesting. I'm going for it.
Yep.
Yes.
I don't always find everything that's on the label myself, but it's some people notice it better than others, and that's each individual palate will pick up different tastes.
I've just spilt it down my old man's cardigan.
Well done. That is
it.
Very, very smooth. That is so easy to drink. For a 6.5 IPA with 80-something IBUs, that went down easy.
Does it not remind you more, Ross? It doesn't say it is, and I can't remember what the cutoff point is. It tastes more like a double IPA than your regular single.
Mm-hmm. Because what we found is the double IPA will cut that first level. It's almost like you have to get past that first level IPA. That okay, well, let us give you the good stuff. But a double would be stronger, wouldn't it?
So for guys who profess to not enjoy IPAs, how are you enjoying your first tries?
This reminds me of other IPAs that have surprised me. where I think I definitely don't like IPAs, but we've
So
evolved.
if multiple IPAs have surprised you, why do you say you're not a fan of IPA?
That's what I'm saying. We've evolved to being we're not fans of bad IPAs.
Well, is anyone a fan of a bad beer?
Yes! So many people are fans of
Yes,
bad
but they're
beer,
wrong.
and this is the problem. The problem is that when Joe Schmo walks out of the LC carrying a case of Coors Light, it's illegal for me to shake it out of his hands.
And thinking back to my previous point, a beer that you have to make as cold as possible.
Yes.
That actually does things to make sure you drink it cold.
Yeah. Where they describe cold as a flavor. Coors Light, it's the coldest beer you can get.
Yeah,
Try
they
this
have
one.
those
It's
mountains
cold.
on the can that have to be blue to make sure it's cold enough.
Cold enough to
If it
not
gets warm, maybe some of the off flavors come out.
exactly. Then it'll maybe actually taste like it's supposed to. As a
Ross hooks us up with a for an IPA evening where we do between 4 and 6 of them in one evening.
That's a good time.
Almost as a joke to get through as many of the IPAs as possible. Not a joke, but you understand what I mean, because there are, as you pointed out, there are so many of them on the market that it needs an evening to try and get through another half a dozen of them. But
if you need a third person to be there that evening to make sure that if you need a tiebreaker between the two of you or something, I'm available.
What I was about to say was, there's always maybe 1 or 2 of those IPAs that we try when we're like, we like that one.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere. Who made this? Yeah.
We're with several of them. I remember specifically, Ross, correct me from, I think it was Nine Locks's The IPA that we both agreed was a really nice, a supposedly single IPA. And please don't ask me to remember anymore, but that one was one evening when we both said, this is so good. But of course, it was going up against 5 other IPAs. Maybe 1 or 2 others that we said, this isn't so bad. We quite like this. And yet a couple of them would be like, it was almost ringing in our ears, the bitterness and the grapefruit. We were like,
we went in with a preconception of what we think is this is too much IPA. This is just stupid. It might be delicious to somebody, but we just don't understand how this level of hop flavor up front, and it's almost so much hop that it tastes, even though there is already a sour beer, this amount of hop profile in my mouth tastes sour. You just sit there going, "Gah."
Yeah. This is a smoother, definitely on the smoother side of what is not officially, unless you can correct me on it, Rob. It does say it's a strong beer, but it's still on the airs on the side of caution. You're not calling it a double, you're calling it an IPA.
It's a single, because our double recipe is a lot stronger.
Yeah.
I am naturally curious as to why it is called the 7-day IPA. Is there any relevance to the 7-day?
So that's mostly because you can drink it 7 days a week.
Okay, thank you.
And people do.
Some people think it takes 7 days to brew, but it doesn't. It's almost 4 weeks.
I can't drink that on my night shifts, unfortunately. So it literally is just a marketing thing.
It's just an everyday beer.
Right, 6.5%.
Everyday enjoyable IPA.
Yes, and it's a strong one.
Well, it's tricky to get a week. No, we've had some 6.2s and some 6.0s.
Yeah.
That's not weak beer, Ross. 6.
No, I don't mean that. I don't mean that. We've had some 6.0s and some 6.2s as IPAs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I said, down in the U.S. Last September when I was on a motorcycle trip, I found a 4.0 IPA that had all the flavor, but I was kind of
this is where I've graduated, or I've kind of mathed this out in my head. When I go to an establishment, usually a bar that isn't like a craft tap room or something special like that, I said, "Oh, what's on tap?" And they said, "Oh," and with an excited look in their eyes, the server always says, "Oh, well, we've got Coors, we've got Coors Light, we've got Molson. Oh yeah, Molson. Can I interest you in it?" I'm like, "Okay, keep going, keep going. Do you have anything like not kind of off the?" And they said, "Well, all right, yeah, we got a something." And often it's Fine Company. I'm like, huh. And I finally looked it up and I went,
Yeah.
oh, cheater craft beer. Oh, I see
Yeah.
what you're doing there. And we've got a Fine Company IPA. And my brain went, well, at least I'm going to get the alcohol percentage. So come on, bring it on, bring
Yeah.
it on. At least I'm.
Yeah, I've run into that too, where you come into the craft beer by Molson. Yeah.
Mm.
And yeah, but that's also part of why we had to look at rebranding Old Biddies to Great Roads. Because you go to a nice fancy steakhouse that talks about a rotating IPA, and we go there purely so the waiter can snootily look down his nose at you when I ask what's on their seasonal rotating tap, and I could just imagine him going, "Well, from Old Biddies we got the 7-day IPA."
I
I think it might go a little better as Great Roads Brewing, because we were fighting a bit of that. A lot of people do like the tongue-in-cheekness that we had, which is why I still want to keep, aspects
mhm.
of our biddy,
Yeah.
but there was just too many people were against it, and if you're trying to
Wow.
grow a brand and a brewery, you kind of gotta appeal to more people.
I'm surprised because even wine, and I thought wine was snooty. I thought wine was, we need to call this one, the cockles of Lord Hirschbald. Or so, even going that far. But they've got one in one of the local wineries right now, and it's just called Conversation Water. And I cringed at that one. I went, really, you're saying that you're going to loosen your tongue with a bit of wine? That seems a little sassy for
Yeah,
wine drinking. But
but if you're
beer,
an established brand, you can get away with that. That's
but
how Nine Locks got away with Dirty Blonde. But the
that
thing is, you can't grow a brand really well on that. Now,
I
unfiltered, I give them all the props for trying, but I have a feeling they're not gonna grow as fast as they could, because I don't mind some of the unfiltered brews, and I think they could, it's just, I know they're trying to be tongue in cheek is going to hurt them in this, now we can go political with the overwoke world, but you have to be so cognizant of, are you offending a demographic that you're trying to make your customers? You know, I don't want to go down a Bud Light rabbit hole, but but that's Bud Light tried to appeal to a demographic and completely annoyed 50% of the market share.
ah was it 50? Was it as high as 50? Because the same
Uh, well, I read an article that said Budweiser itself has lost, their sales have gone down 26%.
and
Wow.
that was a calculated move. Do you remember it was the year or two, year or three before, Gillette did the exact same thing where they did a commercial about and they turned the best a man could get into getting away from toxic masculinity and making fun of the phrase boys will be boys, and there was a backlash, but
Mm-hmm.
someone way smarter than me said these kinds of things where you hear the backlash, well, you can't do that, that's too huggy
Mm-hmm.
huggy hippie nonsense, you can't get away with that. But the fact is those things are starting to happen, and it's not because the companies are starting to realize, you know what, we should be nice about things. The companies are finally realizing, or not realizing, but the companies are calculating that more than enough people are flowing that way that they need to in order to sell. So the
Well, it's their people look at what their target market is, and that's the marketing side of things, which I totally understand. And what you have to look at, where is your target market and how can you best get their attention.
But what Bud Light calculated was losing the people who would get pissed off at a rainbow box was worth it to their bottom line. To gain what they would with their rainbow box. And that was where certain people said, this is encouraging because this is basically telling us that the people who were paid the most money in the world to calculate this kind of thing have figured out that tolerance is more profitable than, to lack of another word right now, bigotry.
Yeah. The challenge became for them is that they discovered the the redneck Bud Light drinker. Because the article I read was just yesterday. Is that Budweiser's sales have been down. It said 26%. Just an article that came across my feed, and then it talked about actually like another brewery in Colorado that's closing. Because I get a lot of beer news in my various feeds, and like a lot of breweries, small breweries, are closing. It's still a very harsh marketplace, and you have to figure out what works for you. And a lot of that depends on the market you're in, what's around you, and how do you target that market. Now, yeah, it is harder for Budweiser because they have to target the entire market because they're everywhere. Like I'm sure them sponsoring the Olympics, or no, not the Olympics, the World Cup of Soccer, in a country that said no drinking at the games, other than these little spaces,
that was
probably cost them a lot of money.
Yeah, they were a little pissed about that.
I can imagine.
Has the craft brewing industry, which is definitely improving over the last number of years, has it made any real inroads into the big boys' profits? The reason why I ask is because you mentioned there, Ross, that when you go into an establishment and they say, yes, we have a Coors Light and we have a Budweiser, but we also have this blah 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 going on by, and you say, oh well, that's just one of the big boys that are doing and increasingly the big boys are now producing small batch.
What do they define small batch?
Yeah.
Well, this is
smaller than the rest of their batches.
Yeah. Do they now? Is there now something of not a backlash, but a almost an acceptance that they can't rest on their laurels and go and say, okay, we are still going to sell billions and billions of dollars worth of Molson Canadian and Budweiser and Coors, etc. Or is it making enough inroads into their profits to make them realize maybe we need to start making a beer for the more discerning customer?
Yeah. See, and that the challenge is though, is they're still a mass producer. Their version of a small batch probably exceeds my annual production in one batch. Yep. And when you start looking at, Moosehead, Cracked Canoe is their craft brewery. Mm-hmm. But is it made at a different facility with smaller tanks? Or is it just made in their regular facility? It's just they don't do as much of it.
Is it sans preservatives? Because oftentimes when I have a big beer, we had our night where we tried the Olin's, the Molson Canadian, and the Keats. That was the three, and I felt and not to get snooty or be all I am a craft beer snob, but I felt like I could drink and taste the preservatives in a large scale beer that I was drinking.
Well, and that is kind of the difference of a basically aficionado who's spent more time with craft beer, is you start noticing the mass market differences. So that's just the way things go.
I've been accused of being a professional taster, to which I said, "What?" I still don't feel like I've tried too much.
You're a professional. Does that mean you get paid for it? Awesome.
Yeah, well, not yet. I don't know. We occasionally
I make jokes that I sometimes get paid to drink beer at 7 a.m.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. That counts.
But it doesn't. I never worry about telling time. I haven't worn a watch in
You
since May 14th,
can't even tell the last time you wore a
2014,
watch. You don't have a calendar
Yeah.
on your wrist either.
Yeah.
I
Are you into your IPA, Ross?
I'm done it. That was I enjoyed that. I think
I
as
brought a spare.
oh, that's the stuff. I enjoyed that as much as I thought I would. I hoped that I was going to enjoy an Old Biddy's IPA, and I sure did. Mostly
Yeah.
because as a non-IPA drinker, I appreciated that it was smoother. It tasted of a hop profile, but it didn't blow my socks off. It didn't destroy me. It just did what I felt an IPA should
You
deliver.
knew you were drinking a craft beer IPA.
Yes.
I knew I was
And,
drinking a good craft beer IPA, not one that was just kind of, you know what, let's just stuff everything into this and then kill everyone.
You just referred to it as, of course, an Old Biddy's, an Old Biddy's classic, as you've said it is, Rob, from the old recipe. But, of course, you did explain to us how Great Roads Brewing got its name while we were there the other day. Do you care to remind me?
Sure. So the new owner, myself, and another person were sitting out on the patio earlier this, I want to say June or July. And we started looking at what was around us. The new owner is very community minded. So that's why we brought in Lake City Cider. We brought in wine from the valley. We won't bring in, something from out of town kind of thing, or like out of the province. We're bringing in ready to drink cocktails from Still Fire Distillery down in the valley. So we want to do things that promote Nova Scotia, keep things local. So we looked around. Folt's House Museum is just down the street from us. For those that don't know, it's just a nice it's an old carriage house style museum. And we started looking at their website. And their website talks about how Cobequid, this is all from memory. I didn't actually study for this, but I say Cobequid is Mi'kma'ki for where the water flows into the ocean or something like that. And Folt's House was the intersection of the path to Cobequid, which is basically towards Truro, which then basically Cobequid Road goes out to the old number 2 out to Truro, and then you have the old number 1, because you got to remember the Mi'kma'ki trading routes are what became the wagon trains, the wagon roads, which then became our old highways, and then the 100 series shortcutted them. So like all these roads we have are what built our country. So right now, our plan is to look more into our heritage and culture around the area and try to build upon that. And so we went with Great Roads because Crossroads was taken because, all great roads lead to great beer. So therefore, it just makes sense, right? That's why the shield of our new logo is based the exact same as if you look at, say, the number 1, number 2, the old highway system. It's the same shape as those highway signs.
Yeah.
True.
That was intentional, and our new logo is a highway going along the coastline, and so we're working on that aspect of the traveling portion of Nova Scotia. We have a lot more research to do to make sure we're properly, making sure we are correct with the Cobequid and the paths to the various places in Nova Scotia. But that gave us the idea. We want to explore it more. We will start to work on the vibe and decor of the tap room to be more roadworthy, so to speak. And that's kind of where our thoughts are going. We just knew our our little old lady her days were numbered, and so it was a necessary thing to do. The feedback we got from NSLC is good, and looks like Ross has to run away.
That's okay. So do I, Phil.
So actually, this is my chance now with this image of the tap room behind him. For those who had visited the old tap room, because we had a lot of people who were coming in haven't been to the new tap room that we moved to this summer. We no longer have the picnic tables inside. We do have a food program, so we have a kitchen with appetizers, burgers, a bunch of different options, and so there are shareables like nacho platters, things like that. We're trying to go more for the brew pub vibe, literally, and you can literally touch the tanks. We're not one of those breweries that has the big wall in between you and the brew house itself. We have these little yellow barricades that drive me bonkers trying to move around. And then depending on what's going on, sometimes you'll be sitting there having your beer, watching me work on things.
It is very tactile. I noticed that. I mean, when you took me, when Tristan and I and Ross sat down at that very table that I can see in that photograph there the other day, and you served me up a burger, which arrived extremely quickly after it was ordered. My son had the mozza sticks. Everything was perfectly delicious, and I love a fry. I'm a sucker for a good burger, so usually when I go into a brew house, or I got to say it, any pub restaurant, I'm usually going to order the burger. It's just something I do. It was perfectly delicious, and it was lovely to actually, like you said.
Yeah. So one of the things,
yellow segregationary fences, and you were showing me the canning process, and working. I keep dropping in and out. I do apologize, but working by your good self. But by all accounts, you're disappearing for a month and allowing things to go while you're swanning around in the Caribbean and Florida for a little while. I'm so jealous.
Yeah. Well, so continuing with the theme of the burger, we're actually talking with a local Windsor area farmer down in the valley to try to get our beef burgers from him, and to try to keep that local thing, keep that going. But right now, the reason now is a good time for me to run away is January, February are traditionally slow months. You know, you have the people who have their New Year's resolutions, they're going to get better and do less drinking or that kind of stuff. And then you have the dry February. Well, March 1st, sales pick up at the NSLC and in the tap room. So right now I've got a lot of cans stocked up in the fridge. I literally have all but maybe 20 to 25 of our kegs full of beverage, and that cooler's about as full as it's going to get. And
as we saw.
Yeah, good. And so I'm looking forward to running away and taking a break, but knowing the tanks are empty, so we're all good there.
It's been lovely to meet you. I've got to get away as well. Ross, I'm out of here. Good night.
We didn't even review any of these, but they were all delicious. Thank you so much, Rob, for being here. Ian, a special thanks to my co-host Ian for always being here as per usual, and we are here every Tuesday 8 p.m. As live here on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@drinknsdry. You can check out the main site is drinknsdry.unsupervised.beer. We've got a profile over on Facebook, or you can find the Drink NS Dry podcast on all 4 of the podcasty places. I think I got everything in there, but a big thanks to Rob Truscott for joining us tonight from Great Roads Brewing. Some delicious stuff going on there. I do recommend you stop by.
111 Cobblecould Road, Lower Sackville.
There's the one. I just toss stuff into GPS and it just guides me there. But thank you for joining us, everyone, tonight.